active participants in the development process were expressing their viewpoints and acting to better their conditions. Hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations and initiatives have used theater as a development tool for education or propaganda, as therapy and as a participating tool, or as an exploratory tool in development. This edition of Platform examines the role of theater in national development. Our guest is a professor of theater for development at the Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, Nigeria, where he has taught since 1979. Professor Steve Abba is currently the director of the Institute for Development Research, Ahmadu Bello University Zaria. His specialties are in theater for development and participatory development approaches. He has written and published more than 30 articles in his areas of specialization. Professor Steve Abba's interest is the interplay between the classroom and the field, and between theory and practice. We intend to explore these interrogative approaches on this edition of Platform as we examine the role of the theater in national development with Professor of Theater for Development, Steve Abba. Welcome to Platform, Prof.
Thank you very much.
As usual on Platform, we have our panelists. Ayinde Shuaga is NTA's Assistant Director of News. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, we have Dr. Bridget Onoche. She is the head of Arts Desk in the Guardian Abuja office. You're welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, viewers.
Professor Steve Abba, a professor of theater for development. Let me ask you this very simple question. What is theater and how can it be used for development?
Okay, I think theater, simply put, can be looked at from two perspectives. One, it's a place where you go and sit down and watch performances when you're thinking in terms of the physical space. But the other side of it, which most people are more familiar with, is that theater is the act of performing issues that are put in dramatic form. That is simply what theater means: performance, issues, and viewing.
And how can you use performance, issues, and viewing for national development? Or rather to achieve national development?
Yes, I think the connection is that any kind of performance or theater performance that you're looking at, the content of that performance is about issues. The issues may be domestic, it could be issues of national concern. And in the process of talking about issues that have national relevance, that particular piece of drama that you're watching as performance is addressing issues in various ways. First of all, you want to bring that issue for public consumption. You want to instigate public debate. You may want to proffer solutions within the drama. And in so doing, you are discussing national issues, of enlightening people on certain issues that may be of concern to their lives. It may be different aspects of national life.
One very related issue that is policy in context is the ongoing fight against corruption.
Yes.
And in that context, the federal government, in its wisdom, came with the Change Begins With Me campaign.
Yes.
That, I think, is one issue we can describe, or rather we can extrapolate from your definition.
Exactly.
So what are your thoughts on the ongoing Change Begins With Me campaign?
I think the Change Begins With Me is fitting into the whole business of fighting corruption. And when you look at the phrase, change begins with me, it's actually a phrase that is very common in behavior change communication. And if you take behavior change communication, the greatest thing that you want to do is that you do not simply preach behavior change to somebody else. You must be seen as an exemplar to adopt and implement. And when I listen change begins with me, I say, oh yes. I think the whole question of attitude change is what is being thrown out here. And corruption issues are issues to do with how people look at resources within the country, to whose benefit should the resources be put at, how should it be managed. And I think we've seen so much in terms about how much money individuals within this country have appropriated. And those appropriated funds are for public use. And I think that when you look at the change begins with me mantra, it's about, can we think differently about what resources mean to individuals and to the country, but by and large to say resources are first and foremost to be used for common good and not personal good. And if we adopt change begins with me, then you are going to say, I am not going to take 10 billion naira and make it my own instead of building roads, instead of providing health services, instead of building schools.
So are we on track?
We are on track, yes.
Well, observers have noted that the theater and dramatic arts in Nigeria have been negatively affected by the recession. How can we, can practitioners and the people generally benefit from this engagement in the Nigerian economy?
I think there are two sides for theater engagement in Nigeria. One is the academic. And within the academic institutions, if you take most of the Nigerian universities where you have theater arts or theater and performing arts, as the name may be, in different places, the vibrancy of theater performances within universities, colleges of education is not diminished at all by the ongoing recession. And the reason why it is not diminished is because it is a curricular practice. And the curriculum goes on. The students will engage in the performances. And interestingly, both students and lecturers, when they are thinking about putting up productions, one of the key questions that come to mind is, which of the plays will I pick so that I can speak, not just to students, but to the larger audience outside of the four walls of the university? And I think that vibrancy is there. And it's not so much dampened by the recession. But if you go outside of the university environment and you're talking about commercial theater houses, or to some extent Nollywood and Kannywood, you do have impact of recession on those, because maybe the output, I can't be sure about this, but maybe the output has been affected because the daily or the monthly numbers of different films that were coming out of the Nollywood industry, maybe that has reduced a bit because of the recession. But in terms of whether that industry is still vibrant, I think it is. Perhaps the industry will be a route to getting out of recession, because that is a very productive industry in which the country, if they invest in it. And I've heard the Minister of Information and Culture talk a lot about the creative industry in Nigeria. And when you talk about the creative industry, you're thinking about growing that industry from both within the academia as well as outside of the academia in Nollywood. And also, there are a few people who have theater houses. I know one young man, Jude Ote, in Jos, who comes to Abuja every once in a while to perform plays. And I think there is also, I think, Aroja Theater in Abuja here. And those are commercial theater outfits. And I think that those are outlets through which this country, if they invest money in such creative endeavors, will be generating money for the country.
Yeah, Prof, let us take theater beyond the entertainment.
Yeah.
We know it is also a tool for education. And, you know, looking at most of government policies, we know that theater can be used for value reorientation, attitudinal change. How much do you think government has engaged these two, considering that we have two government parastatals, National Troupe of Nigeria and National Council for Arts and Culture, that have a Department of Theater and Performing Arts? How much do you think the government has engaged this tool in meeting the people?
I am not sure they have made much capital out of that. It looks to me as if most of the time, when you hear of the National Council for Arts and Culture, there's only one time in the year where they become very prominent. That is when they organize the yearly arts festival. NAFest. And at that point, there is a lot of visibility. After that, I think we are waiting for next year. And for me, the National Council for Arts and Culture to be an optimal institution and a unit of the federal government, you must think beyond a yearly festival. Think beyond that yearly festival in terms of how can the Arts Council research issues of relevance to Nigeria. One of the things I keep saying is that nobody knows for sure in this country how many languages exist in Nigeria. They can tell you Nigeria has 45, 50 languages, but believe you me, Nigeria has more than that.
They talk of over 200.
Over 200 now. But what is the actual number? I relate it to language because every language is also a cultural entity. And in that cultural entity, you need to discover something that they have. Each culture embodies knowledge. Are we tapping into those knowledges and putting them into how they will benefit the national development agenda? You hear a lot of people talk about tourism, but when they talk about tourism, they are mostly talking in terms of sights, dances, songs. How about the knowledge embedded in these different cultures for medicine? Can we harness that and do something that will be useful for us? And a lot of times you hear people say, can we stop medical tourism? India, Israel, Japan, name it, US and the UK. Why are we going to all those places? Our own indigenous knowledges have medical knowledge. And I think it's an issue of where is the synergy between the indigenous medical knowledge and the Western medical knowledge. Interestingly, the medical doctors call the Western knowledge orthodox medicine. And I always fight with that terminology. The orthodox knowledge is the indigenous knowledge. This knowledge of the Western medicine, for me, is a new knowledge. It's not orthodox. The orthodox is the indigenous one. But they reverse it because that's what they believe in, that's what they champion, and very often you hear doctors denigrate indigenous medical knowledge. And I don't know what we are talking about.
Okay, now the teaching and the curriculum of theater and dramatic arts in our institutions have been kind of blamed for some lapses here and there. Do you think that there's a need for a review and change?
There's always need to review any curriculum in any university or any academic institution. As a matter of fact, if you want your knowledge to grow, I would suggest that every 5 years you must review your curriculum. The curriculum of theater arts programs in Nigerian universities were derived mostly from the British system. Because when the University of Ibadan started first with the theater program, that was where theater started first. It was under the auspices of the British government. And that's how it grew. And in the process of theater multiplying in different Nigerian institutions, we were borrowing those classical models of theater studies. The difference, however, is the Ahmadu Bello University started with a totally different. We do exactly what you want because we are interested that this form should stay. We like the idea that the government is fighting corruption, but perhaps Nigerians need is conversation, all sorts of equipment, cameras. You must have equipment to cater to the different needs of the specialty that you want.
Has there been a kind of assessment of the
things that we wanted was distributed that a number of people watched that, and I remember one of the if you talk about tourism, one of the biggest sustenance of tourism is an enabling environment. And believe you me, at the moment, Nigeria won't go far with its tourist industry. Because the tourism, it's in two parts. Tourism is not simply about people coming from other countries. It's also within. But what it means is that you are going to encourage mobility. People moving from place to place, to see things, to invest in things, to buy things. That's how you will generate income. But at the moment, the mobility, even within Nigeria, is very difficult. Transport problems, security problems. If you do a mapping of all the tourist sites and interests scattered across this country, and every once in a while I see it on television, you see a lot of falls in different parts of Nigeria. But I'm not going to go and just start watch any fall where the structures around the fall have not been secured. You will slip into that fall and you drown. And that has happened to a few people. I think drama